everyone, and welcome to today's TCB podcast. Today, we are discussing a topic that is critical to the success of clinical trials, bridging the gap between clinical operations and outsourcing teams. While both functions share the same goal of delivering high-quality studies on time and within budget, challenges can sometimes arise around ownership, communication, and also the system we use to collaborate. Understanding that addressing these challenges can significantly improve how we work together and benefit study execution. I'm happy to be joined today by Ashpreet, who brings extensive experience working across clinical operations and also outsourcing functions. And he has valuable insights to share on how teams can build stronger partnerships. Ashpreet, thank you so much for joining us today. And before we dive into deeper this discussion, could you please briefly introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about your background and also your current role?
Thank you, Alexandra, for inviting me on your podcast. Well, as you know, I am working in the clinical research field, and I've been working for last 7 to 8 years, specifically in outsourcing of clinical trials. So, in my background, basically, it's to manage vendors and to have them onboarded on different trials and studies, and to also make sure that they are, performing well on their day-to-day task. So that's a bit of summary.
Okay, thanks, Ashpreet. It's great to have you here with us. So let's just jump right into our discussion. And I would like to have got our first topic. Focus this
Sure.
on accountability and also on the ownership. One of the recurring topics we hear across organizations is the importance of having clearly defined responsibilities between clinical operations and also outsourcing group. From your side, Ashpreet, are roles and responsibilities clearly defined between these two functions? And where do you see strong alignment and where do ambiguities still exist?
Well, I think it's one of the most important and debated topic in clinical outsourcing. So when a clinical trial starts, theoretically, all the organizations, they have governance framework in place, such as your RASI matrices, escalation protocols, your communication channels, etc. But in practice, there are occasions that these lines, they blur quickly once the trial is on way. And from an outsourcing function, typically, who owns the vendor relationship from a contractual and commercial standpoint, is not really sometimes aligned with the clinical operations with their own delivery and timelines. There is a gap between the two functions, basically. And the challenge is that these two objectives don't always move in a synchronized way, as it may have appeared in the beginning of the trial. And when there are some issues that come on the way while the trial is ongoing, I don't know, for example, activation delay, or there is a change in protocol, the question of who owns the decision and who owns the cost becomes very real, very fast. And I think the organization that handle this best are the ones that invest in a joint governance structure early, and not just contract signature and start the trial. And they should be all their functional teams, whether it's outsourcing, operations, they're all aligned, and they know the life cycle of the whole trial, and it's not just everybody working in their own corner.
Okay. Interesting thoughts, Ashpreet. It sounds like while roles may be documented, can still be differences in interpretation when studies become more complex or when unexpected situations arise. So
Exactly.
in your experience, what practical steps can teams take to ensure accountability remains clear throughout the study, the trial life cycle?
I think the most important thing in industry, in my experience, you need to first have the scope evolution. You need to see how the trial is changing, why and what are the reasons that the contract, how it was supposed to go is not changing. What are the conversations that are taking place between different teams, specifically if you speak about operationals or outsourcing team, and how these gaps are escalated and to who, whether in a timely manner or not. And if these gaps are flagged early on the trial or it's taking a big delay, because every day lost is every day delay in the overall trial timelines and the deliverance. So for me, it's very important for these two things to be hand in hand. Plus, the third is budget, I guess, versus timeline conversation. So for outsourcing, it's managing the financial exposure, while operation team is concerned with the delivery of the project. So both have their own objectives and they have their own pressure, but ultimately both conversations should happen in parallel together rather than both team focusing on their own objectives. And I think the fix is usually structure, getting both the functions in the same room earlier and make sure that both of them understands each other's priority and their individual priority, which leads to organizational priority, that is timely deliverance of clinical trial and have a clear decision on ownership.
Okay, thanks, Ashpreet. Really, clear ownership is certainty, like a strong foundation for successful collaboration. So let's build on that and talk about more and deeper when our communication. Even when responsibilities are clearly defined, communication, as we also briefly explained and told, remains one of the biggest factors, like influences successful partnership. Who will be responsible on what? Your side and experience, what do the biggest communication breakdowns?
In my experience across the industry, I've seen one of the major breakdowns in communication comes when there is the time of a change order with a potential client or a sponsor. If there is a change in the scope of work and if the contract is not always what it was supposed to be, without having proper communication, there are gaps, and this leads to a lot of tension while a change order is being negotiated with a sponsor or a client. And I think we need to also make sure that each team or each department are trying to resolve probably the same problem in their own end, in their own corner. And I think that's where the biggest communication breakdown comes in, when people are doing things at their own end and not at a common structural governance organization level. So it's very important that there are defined roles and defined people who are assigned to see if there is, for example, an escalation, who is going to handle. Not everybody is working on the same problem. So bad communication leads to duplication. That's what I say. So if there is bad communication between teams, there is duplication of work. You are using more resources for something which is not contracted for the same amount of resource, and that leads to a lot of problems. While we were speaking about the first point, change order with sponsor, and I think these are the points which one needs to keep in mind.
Okay, I completely understand you and agreed with you. And it sounds like frequent engagement and also shared visibility can make like a significant difference. And so this naturally brings us to my third question regarding systems and tools. So as organizations continue to adopt new technologies and also digital solutions, effective collaboration increasingly depends on how well our systems support cross-function work. And as you just also told us, that sometimes we can do the same task and repeat the same like activities by the different people. So we just spend time and our resources on repeating tasks. Do you believe that systems and tools used by clinical operations and also by outsourcing teams are sufficiently integrated today?
Honestly, there's still a lot of work to do in industry, because there are a lot of organizations that are running multiple systems. So you would see an organization have probably a different system for CTMS, different for finance, different for procurement, different for vendor, and most of the time they don't talk to each other in a meaningful real time way because they are not connected. So they're all doing their bits in their corner, and in practice that's a lot of critical reconciliation that still needs to be done manually. which is oftenly done on spreadsheets. And the idea to have a system was to get the spreadsheet off the hook. But often at the end of a quarter, or I don't know, you have a reconciliation of end of trial. You need to get all these systems, on a spreadsheet and spend time to see how they can speak to each other. How can outsourcing function in particular? They lack visibility into operational metrics because they are not done on the same system. They don't have same language, I would say, that they speak, and that could trigger a contract or budget action. And I think there's a growing interest in platform that can bridge that gap between the operational side and the outsourcing slash finance side. And I think the organization investing in that integration now will have a real competitive advantage in how they manage their vendor performance and cost predictability. And of course, we all know the famous AI coming into picture. I think the organization that provides this platform and the one that makes use of it would be the one that would be have a real advantage in future. That's how I see it.
It's my favorite topic about AI. A lot of companies just like saying AI, but okay, maybe later we can discuss about it. So as I see, yes, many teams they still work across multiple platforms, just like you also told, for study oversight, for vendor management, and also like financial tracking. And yeah, agree completely that sometimes we have got rather big gap since we need to track everything, and also during our trial reconciliations, especially when we have got, let's say, the trial, they are going for like 5+ years. We need to have got the data for the previous years. So, okay. So looking ahead, what do you think like additional improvements in system and technology would further strengthen the partnership between clinical operations and also between outsourcing? If we're not speaking about like the platforms who will use AI, maybe something else.
Sure. I think what excites me most right now is where the industry is heading. There is a big convergence of operational expertise with and data capability. And for a long time, outsourcing was primarily a relationship and governance function, which is still true. But organizations are pulling ahead, and they are the ones figuring out how to make their data work as hard as their people. So whether that's vendor performance visibility or a smarter FT utilization model, or even integrating real world evidence early in the trial design process. I think the next generation of clinical operation leaders will need to be fluent in both operational and analytical dimension of the work. And I think that is genuinely exciting, and that's where these new platforms in the market comes into picture, which give this possibility to work on both end of the stream and have them managed correctly. So that's how I see a new type of clinical operation lead in future, not just operation, but the outsourcing side and budgeting side, everything under one platform.
Okay. Reasonable. So we have covered like several important topics today. I would say even from role clarity and communication to system integration and also technology implementations. Ashpreet, before we close our podcast, I would like to ask you for some like final thoughts recommendations. If you were advising companies, organizations that want to strengthen their collaboration between clinical operations and also outsourcing teams, what would be your like, top recommendations for them?
Top recommendation I would say is to have a team aligned and make them understand both processes. Operation needs to understand what outsourcing is doing and vice versa. Have a common structure of how the budget is built and how the budget is transcribing into performances of those vendors. And thirdly, how you track it, how you manage it, and how you budget it. And that's with a reliable system, I would say, that can do it. Because Excel is good, and at the end of the day, it's still a lot of manual work and can lead to human error. There could be problems related to, if a trial is too long, space, memory. And I think the third point is to have a software that speaks the language and bridges that gap.
Thanks to highlight these reliable softwares. I like this comment a lot. So Ashpreet, thank you anyway so much for sharing your insights, your thoughts, and also experiences with us today. A few key topics stood out from our conversations: the importance of clearly defined ownership, proactive and also like transparent communication, and the last but not least, the value of integrated systems that help teams to work from the same information and toward the same objectives. So successful study delivery depends not only just on strong individual functions, but also on strong partnership between them, like we also discussed. And
Exactly.
Ashpreet, thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you everyone for listening. We hope you have found today's discussion valuable and that it provides idea you can bring back to your teams and also companies, organizations. Until next time, thank you for listening. Take care.
Thank you, Alexandra. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.